Premier and this government has indicated that they were interested in changing the Land Act to allow for joint decision-making. Now, I understand that the government has indicated that they do not plan to bring this forward this spring, but that they do plan to do consultation, which means they're planning to bring it on after the next election. Mr. Speaker, shared decision-making has been something we have done in this province for many years now. Accommodating, dealing with First Nations is not perfect, but there are many things that have been done. I personally signed 435 agreements with First Nations during my time in government. So my question to you, Mr. Speaker, through you to the Premier is this. With the amount of pushback that is coming on the land issue, with the concern that we're hearing from the forest sector, from the agriculture sector, from all the resource sectors, from people who access the back country, is it this Premier's plan to do consultation and then bring in a change to the Land Act should BC have the misfortune of another NDP government after the next election?
Minister of Water, Land and Resources Stewardship.
Thanks. I thank my northern neighbour for his question. From the very beginning of the considerations around amendments to the Land Act, we said we would take the time to get things right. We engaged with over 600
Members.
We
Minister
we engaged with over 650 groups and leaders representing tens of thousands of British Columbians, from the natural resource sector, from the fishing and hunting sectors, and on down the list. We heard three principal things from them. One is they did not want to return back to the days of conflict and courts that were expensive for everybody and did not advance this province. They wanted reconciliation to work. And thirdly, they asked that the timing and the pace of these particular changes needed more space, more conversation. This might be a foreign concept to my friends across the way. We actually, two things we dealt with in this issue is one, is to deal with the facts, not the misrepresentation of facts that were done. The second.
Members, wait for your turn to ask questions. Please wait. Let the minister continue.
That might be foreign to my friends across the way is we listen to people when they asked for more time, and that's exactly what we're doing. The goal of shared decision making is the goal of the Reconciliation Act, which my friend voted for, which everybody in this place at the time voted for. That requires us to do the difficult work of reconciliation, and that work requires us to provide the tools that enables us to work together for a better future for all British Columbians. Thank you.
Leader of the Fourth Party Supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for response. I've asked for a commitment from the Premier, of course, and the Minister gave us his response. The reality is this, Mr. Speaker. The Government of British Columbia is responsible for making sure that decisions are made on the land base for all British Columbians, taking all British Columbians' interests into consideration. When that decision-making is made jointly with First Nations, what you're talking about is First Nations making decisions that are in the interest of the First Nations, not for all people in the province. And that's why shared decision-making is so important versus joint decision-making, because ultimately it is the Crown's responsibility for Crown land to make decisions. And what the Minister has just said in terms of going forward with consultation, we heard this before. We heard this on the caribou issue up in the Peace Country, when the government said, after implementing a policy and the pushback, they said, oh, we're going to delay and we're going to do consultation. Well, all they did was kick the can 9 months down the road and then implemented everything exactly it is against the will of the people in the North. Same thing with the Health Professions and Occupations Act. They brought in consultation on something, quite frankly, that had nothing to do with the Act, or hardly anything to do with the Act itself. Then the Act was just implemented, and they were surprised with the pushback. Mr. Speaker, this government has a pattern. This government has a pattern of going out, consult, simply to kick the can down the road, try to release the pressure, and then implement their plans anyway. Mr. Speaker, this government should come clean on what they're planning to do after the next election, should they happen to form government again. They should be clean with the people of British Columbia about whether they will be implementing joint decision-making.
Premier.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Premier.
So I wanted to get up on this question, Honourable Chair. The concern I have is that the view that has been advanced by the leader of the Conservative Party is a view that the only way to advance reconciliation in this province is to take something away from one person and give it to somebody else. And we know, we've seen it, that working in partnership with First Nations, we can lift all boats. Communities as a whole can prosper. We see that prosperous First Nations that have the ability to generate wealth and economies for their people contribute to the whole region. This view that the only way to advance reconciliation is to take from you to give to you is not what we're experiencing in British Columbia. And the member willfully ignores the legacy of defeats in court that this province has faced when nations come and assert their rights. Most recently, the Blueberry River decision and the Mineral Tenure Act decision. These are huge issues for our provincial economy. We need to come to terms with nations in this province to make sure we're prosperous into the future. Pretending that this didn't happen, and he was the minister when he was a minister in a party that was on deck when the Chilcotin decision was handed down, which declared title over a huge portion of British Columbia, issued from the bench with no preparation, chaos on the land base. We can't afford that. The courts are so clear that we need a new approach, and the good news is when we work together, amazing things can happen, and we actually improve life for everybody in the province. I hope the member has a look, frankly, a little bit at his own record and some of those agreements that he signed, and how transformative they were for nations, and how important they were for communities. And get away from this narrative that the only way we can build this province is by taking away from someone else, because we're all in this together. And that's how we build British Columbia.